The crypto market is pulling back again as I'm recording this, and a lot of chart analysts are saying it's possible, maybe even likely, that Bitcoin could dip into the $90,000 range and XRP might drop below $2. They might be right, but here's the thing. Even if that happens, don't lose sight of the bigger picture. XRP, currently sitting just over $2, still has the potential to increase by 500% to 1,000%. That's not a guarantee. Let me be clear. I don't make price predictions because I'm not a chart analyst, but based on what I've seen happen in the crypto world, it's absolutely possible. I just want to share my perspective so you can think about the long-term possibilities, no matter what today's charts say. Even at this price point, it's still exciting to think about where XRP could go. Sure, it would have been amazing to grab it back in November at 49 cents before that first big pump, no doubt about it. But even now, the idea of it potentially climbing upwards of 1,000% isn't out of the question. I tend to keep my expectations pretty grounded, but I'd still say that kind of growth is definitely within the realm of possibility. And just to be clear up front, I don't have any kind of financial background, so take this as my personal perspective, not financial advice. Just a quick reminder, I'm not giving financial advice here, so don't make any buy or sell decisions based on what I say or write. As I'm recording this, it's Saturday, June 21st, 2025. Here's where we're at. XRP is sitting at $2.10, down just a tiny bit over the last 24 hours. Bitcoin is at $103,385. And if you check the 24-hour chart, you'll notice a bit of a dip yesterday. It climbed back up to around $2.14 before dipping again. Right before or just after I hit record, XRP was even at $2.09 for a moment. So as always, I've got to sound the alarm here. Endless warnings, I know, but it's important to stay cautious. This is what's on my radar right now. Analysts are still sending out plenty of warnings that this could happen. Opinions are pretty split. Some think it's likely, while others aren't so sure. But with yesterday's weakness and what we're seeing today, it seems like more people are starting to believe it's at least a possibility. So this morning, I came across a super interesting video that was just published a few hours ago. It's from Bitcoin maximalist Anthony Pompliano's channel, and he's chatting with Jordi Visser. I only discovered Jordi a few months ago, but I've quickly become a huge fan of his work. In the video, Jordi's the guy on the right. He's got an incredible wealth of knowledge and experience. Seriously, he's been in the investment and finance world for 30 years. He's also the president and chief investment officer of Weiss Multi-Strategy Advisors. If you're curious, his profile is up on the CoinDesk website, but trust me, this guy knows his stuff. When it comes to crypto, he brings a ton of knowledge and experience to the table, making every conversation super fascinating. He really has a knack for seeing the big picture and connecting all the dots about what's happening right now. Honestly, anytime I see one of Pomp's videos pop up in my feed with Jordi Visser as the guest, I'm clicking on it without hesitation. That's how quickly I've become a big fan. He shared a couple of great insights that really stood out, and I'm excited to dive into them. So I wanted to share something interesting that Pomp mentioned. Yeah, coming from a Bitcoin maximalist, it's worth noting. But here's the fun part. Jordi made a pretty bold prediction. He's convinced we're about to take off like the whole crypto asset class. Bitcoin, altcoins, all of it. And what's the trigger for altcoins specifically? Alt season. Jordi thinks if Ethereum stays above $2,700 for 2 weeks, that could kick things off. It's funny because over the past few months, while everyone was yelling, Ethereum is dead after it dropped to $1,400, I was like, no way, that's total nonsense. A lower price doesn't mean an asset is done for. It just makes people panic and say stuff like that. It's the same thing that happened with XRP in 2024. Tons of people yelling it was dead. Spoiler, it wasn't. Those social media posts definitely didn't age well, did they? We've seen this happen before with Bitcoin, and now it's Ethereum's turn to get the same treatment. Recently, Ethereum dropped sharply to $1,400, then shot back up to around $2,800. Right now, it's sitting at just over $2,400. Based on his experience, he explained why closing above $2,700 is such a big deal. I won't go into all the details here, but he's confident that hitting that level could kick off alt season. And yes, that would include XRP. Even Anthony Pompliano, a diehard Bitcoin supporter who's made his stance crystal clear, thinks an alt season is on the horizon, and he's predicting it'll hit in the second half of 2025. He sounds almost 100% convinced it's going to happen. And yes, that would include everything XRP too. So if he's right, we could be in for some action before summer officially wraps up around September 20th or 22nd. There's still a good chance we could see an alt season kick off this summer. A lot of analysts have been talking about this, and it's not just speculation. It's based on historical trends. Remember summer 2017, Bitcoin took off and we saw a big alt season right after. Historically, this happens every fourth year in the cycle. And guess what? We're in that fourth year now. So if it doesn't happen this time, it'd definitely be a little surprising. If it turns out differently, we might look back and think maybe those analysts were right about this cycle being longer or a bit different. But for now, all signs point to an exciting summer ahead. That might be why it feels a bit different or slightly extended, and maybe there's a case to be made for that. But honestly, I'm still a little skeptical. There's such a strong connection between global M2 liquidity and Bitcoin, along with the broader crypto market. Sure, it's not a perfect 100% correlation. That's to be expected. But if you're looking at trends and playing the odds, here's the reality. About 90% of the time, Bitcoin moves in the same direction as global M2. That's not just a coincidence. It's why global M2 is one of the most important metrics to keep an eye on when it comes to Bitcoin and crypto. What's going on here? This is one of the most important pieces of data to pay attention to. Think about it. If you're playing the odds and consistently betting in a certain direction, it's likely to correlate and you'll win around 90% of the time. That's pretty solid, right? Now, given that, it's no surprise why people like Raoul Pal, a global macro investor, founder of Real Vision, and a former Goldman Sachs pro, are making some bold predictions. He's saying that if Bitcoin continues to track M2 money supply, we could be looking at $140,000 Bitcoin by July. All right, let's dive in. Keep your eyes on the prize here, folks. I came across this post from Mikey Bull Crypto, and it's worth sharing because it ties into the kickoff of alt season. Now, maybe Ethereum isn't your thing, and that's totally fine, but check this out. Here's an ETH/USD chart that caught my eye. It points out that while some people are turning bearish on ETH, it's actually coiling up within a macro triangle, potentially gearing up for an explosive breakout to a cycle peak. That said, there's still a bit of caution in the air. Some analysts are concerned we might see a drop before any big move. I wanted to share some highlights from a newsletter that just dropped today, written by Crypto Insight UK, a member of the XRP community and a talented chart analyst. After reading it, I shared it on X because honestly, he always does such a great job with his insights. I won't go over the whole thing here, but there are a few key points I think you'll find super interesting and maybe even a bit encouraging. That said, there's also a small dose of caution if his short-term suspicions turn out to be true. Either way, it's definitely worth a look. There are so many reasons to feel optimistic right now. The idea of XRP hitting double-digit price action, totally plausible. This discussion comes from an update titled The Calm Before the Crypto Storm, What Happens Next, the Weekly Insight Edition 147. It kicks off by touching on current geopolitical events, like the news everyone's been hearing about Israel and Iran. However, the focus isn't on the news itself, but on how it could impact the market. The perspective shared here really aligns with what I've believed for a while now, based on data I've seen and shared before. It's worth revisiting that insight because it's still so relevant to what's happening now. It's not just me who thinks this. Data backs it up. When chaotic events happen, whether it's wars, missile launches, or other scary scenarios, there's almost always some kind of market reaction. Looking back over the decades, you often see a dip, sometimes even a big crash driven by fear. And we've seen a bit of that recently too, but here's the thing. These reactions are usually short-lived and don't really change anything on a bigger macro level. And hey, it's not just my take on this. It's something Crypto Insight UK has also pointed out, and I totally agree with that perspective. Jordy Visser, who's been in finance for decades, absolutely nailed it in his video this morning. He pointed out something really important. Markets can react to big events, even geopolitical ones, but those reactions are often short-lived before things bounce back and even take off. So if you're feeling nervous about what's going on in the world right now, try not to stress too much. Sure, there's no absolute guarantee. Unexpected events or bigger conflicts can rattle the markets for longer periods, but let's be real. How likely is that? History shows us that while people sometimes fear the worst or predict things like the next world war, those scenarios almost never play out. Let's dive into what's happening in the short term with crypto. Crypto Insight UK has been sharing some warnings and insights that are worth paying attention to. In his section titled Altcoin Thoughts, he talks about ETH and XRP. For Ethereum, he points out that the $2,200 range seems likely, mentioning the potential for a lower liquidity sweep. As for XRP, he highlights a target around $1.92. which lines up with what he's been predicting. He's made it pretty clear that while there's always a chance it might not happen, he'd honestly be surprised if it didn't. So he's definitely leaning toward the idea of a pullback. And he's not alone. Other analysts like Credible Crypto are sharing similar thoughts. There are plenty of analysts like KC Trades who share this perspective. So you're not alone in thinking this way. But hey, it's not the end of the world. Here's the deal. If we see a dip into this range, prices could drop sharply as traders scramble to close positions and sell their longs, which can create a ripple effect. This might result in aggressive downside wicks, and we could see another 10% drop, maybe even more. The good news? These kinds of drops are usually short-lived. Long positions and limit orders, like mine, tend to absorb the sell-off quickly, which can push prices right back up. I'm pretty sure lots of people have limit orders set at these lower price levels. Sometimes it feels like people don't even expect their orders to get filled, but when it happens, it can really catch you off guard. If you see a big enough crater in the market, prices can hit rock bottom and then suddenly skyrocket. That kind of thing happens all the time when assets are oversold. Now, if we do see this final correction, something a lot of analysts are talking about, including the blockchain backer in his latest video, it could follow the usual pattern. While it's not guaranteed, what typically happens in situations like this is a final pullback in the chart structure. In this case, the blockchain backer thinks it could push Bitcoin into the mid 90,000 cents, possibly around $98,000 cents. Interestingly, that aligns with what Crypto Insight UK is predicting too. And what about Global M2? Well, they've got some insights on that as well. I just wanted to quickly share something I've been talking about a lot lately. It's such an important metric, not the end all be all, of course, but it's probably as close as you can get to one. So here's the deal. There's a section titled Global M2 Money Supply that really caught my attention. It explains why I'm confident prices could rebound quickly, whether we see a dip or not. The reason? Several positive macroeconomic factors are at play. For one, global M2 money supply is ticking up, and it's nearing all-time highs. Raoul Pal and Jamie Coots did an awesome job breaking down the macro indicators and how they relate to crypto prices in a roundup this week. They even shared a link, which I watched a couple of days ago. It's a great video, definitely worth checking out. These guys are seriously all about the data, and I love it. If you're into geeking out a bit and want someone to break everything down for you step by step, this is exactly the kind of video you need. They dive into the importance of things like global liquidity, specifically global M2, and highlight key indicators like the new PL. I actually mentioned the new PL just a couple days ago, and here's why it's so important. The NUPL, a net unrealized profit / loss, becomes super relevant when a certain percentage is reached. Even if we're just focusing on Bitcoin, which, let's face it, leads the market anyway, it makes sense to start there. Historically, altcoin seasons tend to follow Bitcoin's lead, so it's always a solid first step to keep an eye on. If you look at the net unrealized profit in Bitcoin's market cap, it's pretty clear we're not near the top yet. I mentioned this in a video a couple of days ago. Right now, we're sitting at around 55%. So when should you start to worry? Historically, things start heating up when we get closer to 75%. That's when you might want to keep an eye on things and consider that a top could be forming. For some context, in the 2021 cycle, it peaked around 78%. The previous cycle was even higher, hitting about 86, 87%, but there were unique reasons for that, which I've covered in earlier videos. I won't dive into those details here, but the takeaway is that we still have some room to grow. No need to panic just yet. With institutional money coming in, things are starting to shift a bit. It's definitely something to keep an eye on as we get closer. That said, we're not quite seeing everything align perfectly just yet. The market cycle isn't over. XRP has already had its moment of excitement, just a little teaser really. But the big moves, the real face melting moments, those are still ahead. We're getting closer though, definitely very close. Also, if you haven't already, take some time to check out the newsletter. It's packed with great insights, and I think you'll find it super valuable. Let me add just one more thought here, just a quick bit, I promise. If in doubt, zoom out. This is such an interesting concept. What I'm really saying is that while there's always a chance for a short-term dip in crypto, and let's be honest, no one can predict the exact timing, the next big phase for Bitcoin is likely going to be a period of excitement and massive growth. We're talking a potential jump of 80% to 150% from where it is now. If that turns out to be true, we could be looking at Bitcoin reaching over $200,000. Honestly, he might be right, but I tend to get a little more skeptical when we start talking about those higher price levels. A lot of analysts I follow seem pretty confident about Bitcoin hitting around $150,000, which Sounds more realistic to me, but hey, who knows? He could totally be right. Here's the thing though, if Bitcoin does hit those crazy high prices, that's when the higher price expectations for XRP start to make a lot more sense. Why? Because so much of this depends on how much profit people take from Bitcoin and then reinvest into altcoins like XRP. Even if you don't care about Bitcoin or don't hold any, this still matters. The higher Bitcoin goes, the more profits roll into other coins like XRP and altcoins. Like that's why Bitcoin's price can impact your portfolio, even indirectly. It all connects. I'd absolutely love to see Bitcoin hit $250,000 this cycle. Honestly, I'm a little skeptical it'll go that high, but if it does, wow, XRP holders, get ready because there'll be so many more people experiencing life-changing wealth. If that kind of surge happens, things are going to get absolutely wild. When it comes to altcoins, the potential gains are unreal. We're talking anywhere from 500% to 1,000%, maybe even 2,000%. And for some lucky picks, possibly 10,000%. This is the time to be paying attention and picking the right projects. I truly believe this. I'm as close to 100% certain as you can get. Now, let's break it down. XRP is currently a little over $2. A 500% increase would take it to about $13. That's not crazy at all. It's actually very possible. That's not crazy at all. It's actually pretty easy to imagine happening this cycle. Now, if more money starts flowing into Bitcoin and it pushes a bit beyond 150K, we could see XRP making some serious moves too. A 1,000% increase from here might sound wild, but it's not out of the question. That kind of growth would put XRP in the $25 to $26 range, give or take. Here's my take, just my humble opinion. A 1,000% gain for XRP, honestly, not crazy at all. But when we start talking about $2,000 XRP, that's where I start to lose faith. That would mean hitting $50 XRP this cycle. And while I'd love to be wrong, I just don't see it happening. I'm super skeptical about that kind of prediction. Now, a 10,000% gain, let's be real. At that point, you're talking about small cap coins. And even then, it's like picking a needle in a haystack. It's just too close to gambling for my taste. That's not the approach I want to take. Personally, I stick with large caps and maybe a few mid caps here and there. That's my comfort zone, especially when you focus on utility. Here's the thing. The market has already shown us which projects it thinks are useful. Look at the top coins, the large caps. The market did the homework for you. If you're sticking with large cap crypto investments, that's awesome. You can still see crazy outsized returns in this space. Way more potential than most other markets. Why? Because there's still so little money in crypto as an asset class. Doubling, tripling, or even quadrupling your investment doesn't take nearly as much as it would in more established markets. Oh, and here's something else worth mentioning. Bitcoin dominance plays a big part in this. If history is any guide, and I think it is, maybe even more dramatically this time, we can expect a sharp drop in Bitcoin dominance at some point. That's typically when altcoins take off and start significantly outperforming, creating big opportunities on the upside. Take a look at the small white circle labeled XRP move. It's wild. Even just a 10% pullback in Bitcoin dominance saw XRP shoot up from $0.50 to $2.70, eventually topping out at $3.30. Although that's probably a typo. It actually peaked at $3.40 this cycle, hitting a new all-time high. Here's what I'm talking about. See where I'm moving my mouse? That XRP move is tied to the Bitcoin dominance chart. Look at how much Bitcoin dominance dropped there and notice what happened. Just that small dip caused such a big move for XRP. And this wasn't even one of those dramatic dumps you'd expect at the end of a cycle heading into alt season. This is why I'm still convinced the cycle isn't over. There's no way in my mind that all this money has flowed into Bitcoin, we hit the peak, and then we don't get some insanely ridiculous alt season. That would mean humans suddenly change their behavior. And honestly, I just don't buy that. Are we really saying people are no longer interested in chasing profits and reinvesting them into things they think will grow? That behavior has been a core part of the crypto space since day one. And now it's just gone. Did human nature magically change overnight? I don't think so. Let's be real. It doesn't work that way. Now, here's the interesting part. Imagine what a 30-40% pullback or more in Bitcoin dominance could mean for altcoins. Whether we're talking about dominance at 67%, 68%, 69%, or even as high as 74%, we're entering a range where it's time to think about altcoins. It's a good idea to start topping off your bags and preparing for some major moves in altcoins, both relative to Bitcoin and Bitcoin against the US dollar. When that shift happens, it's likely to lead to some explosive upside. This is a perspective shared by some of the smartest and most reputable minds I follow, and honestly, it just makes sense. Everything lines up perfectly. Of course, this should be happening. That's why I'm so excited about what this means for XRP. When I say XRP could go up 500%, 1,000% from here, it's not a crazy thought. We'll have to wait and see, but seriously, if you're not excited right now, what's holding you back? Even if you're worried about a pullback, there's no need to panic. Pullbacks are totally normal. If something you expect to happen actually plays out and then the price moves upward afterward, which also makes sense, why stress? Take a step back, look at the logic, the data, and the bigger picture. Don't let short-term price swings mess with your emotions. Just wanted to give a quick shout out to an excellent newsletter from Crypto Insight UK. It's definitely worth checking out. It got me thinking about some of the topics covered, and I wanted to share a few thoughts. Honestly, even if the market dips, it's no big deal. I've been through way worse. I've been holding XRP for 7.5 years now, and not once have I sold any of it, though I do plan to during this cycle. I've seen plenty of ups and downs, and this current volatility, totally normal. We've had these same conversations before, just with different numbers. Remember when XRP was bouncing between $0.20 and $0.30? People were panicking. What if it drops to $0.15? Then it went up to $0.35, back down to $0.25, and so on. Those swings felt huge at the time, but looking back, it's just part of the ride. Markets like this always keep you on your toes. This is exactly the kind of situation we're looking at here, just at a higher price point, because the market continues to believe in XRP. When you check out the top 10 coins by market cap, we've got them on the screen. It's basically the world saying these are the coins that make the most sense right now. Sure, you could debate it and things might shift over time, but let's be real. There's a reason Bitcoin, ETH, and XRP have consistently stayed at the top. It's no coincidence. XRP is clearly a standout. Just sharing some thoughts here. Let me know what you think. I'm ready for things to get moving. We're almost there though, really close. Oh, and just a quick reminder, I'm not a financial advisor, so please don't make any decisions to buy or sell based solely on what I say or write. That wouldn't be the best idea.